Hey,
Yes.
this program is created by the Center for the Study of Art, Architecture, History, and Nature, or Cezanne as I call it, and ImagineLifelongLearning.com. Now we're going to start with our speaker shortly, but first, a little housekeeping. Everyone watching will be muted during our speaker's presentation, which will last about 15 minutes. We'll have plenty of time for questions at the end. If you have a question, please type it into the chat box and we'll get to as many as we can. This program is being recorded. You'll be able to watch it again later on the library's Facebook and the library's YouTube channel pages. As a reminder, we'll be here on Zoom every Tuesday at 12:30 p.m. with a great lineup of local speakers. Now, today is the first Tuesday of the month, so we focus on art and creativity. Today's featured speaker is Adam Zyglis. Adam is a Pulitzer Prize-winning editorial cartoonist for the Buffalo News. The Buffalo native, he graduated summa cum laude from Canisius College, where he did his first cartooning work for the student newspaper, The Griffin. His cartoons are now internationally syndicated and have appeared in publications including the Washington Post, USA Today, the New York Times, and the Los Angeles Times. He has also been awarded the Clifford K. and James T. Berryman Award by the National Press Foundation, the National Headliner Award from the Atlantic City Press Club, and the Grams Aronson Cartooning with a Conscience Award. Adam was scheduled to speak live in the Hall of Philosophy on Buffalo Day at Chautauqua last summer, but the physical season was canceled. He was included in their virtual program. The theme for that presentation and today's was Art and Democracy. And now let's welcome Adam Zyglis, hearing about art and democracy.
Thank you, Dennis. It's great to be here, everyone. It's great to see your faces in this age of COVID anti-socialism. It's wonderful to see people and connect, even if it's virtually. I'll bring up a slideshow of my work, and I hope you find it interesting and learn a lot about the role of editorial cartooning, the important role of editorial cartooning in our democracy. So let me first bring up this slideshow. And of course, thank you to Dennis and Joy and everyone at Imagine Buffalo and the library for including me in this program. I think it's a very important series you have. Okay. Okay, here we go. Okay, so since the days of Thomas Nast, editorial cartoons have used creativity to speak truth to power and to hold leaders accountable with satire and ridicule. This vital American tradition holds the line of freedom of expression to help ensure all Americans can express their views. So the presentation today, I'll show you a little bit about my work, but also just about cartooning in general and its role in America and around the world to help you understand how important cartoons are to the role of free speech in America. So here, this is a recent cartoon I have to start with. It just shows in this time when the president has been denying our election results, showing that one of the foundations of democracy is our election systems, and he's using the Republican Party here as a sort of tool to squash that. One of the other pillars or foundations of our democracy would be freedom of expression. And as a cartoonist or as Americans, we take for granted that I can draw this cartoon, criticizing our elected leader and pointing out an important truth. But we tend to take this for granted. This is an artist from Iran, Atina Farghadani. She is an artist, cartoonist, and in 2015, she drew this cartoon below. It's more of an illustration, but it's depicting Iranian parliament voting. And I believe they were voting on women's rights, actually denying women to have rights. And she criticized them, depicting them as animals. And she was arrested and jailed, sentenced to 12 years, and served eventually only 18 months because of public pressure. But this is not uncommon overseas for cartoonists and illustrators to be jailed. They're some of the first people in society to be persecuted and jailed because they're speaking out for what they believe in, criticizing leaders because of the power of the visual. And some of these dictators and strongmen, they have thin skin, so visual ridicule, is something that they want to squash before the written word. And as I was president of the AAEC in 2015, which is the Association of American Editorial Cartoonists, and I opened my eyes to what was happening around the world for years as the world was sort of shifting to strong men and away from democracy. I was seeing that cartoonists all over the place were getting jailed and threatened. Here's another example. This is Musa Kart. He's a cartoonist in Turkey, the man on the left here. And this is one of his cartoons on the right. He is depicting President Erdogan of Turkey and the corruption that he was responsible for in taking money from the public vault. And he was jailed and arrested in 2017, sentenced to over 3 years. But again, because of public pressure, was eventually released. But again, this is not unusual. And as the president of the AEC, we got involved with another group called the CRNI. It's Cartoonist Rights Network International. And together we helped identify cartoonists who were threatened, and we gave them legal aid, and we presented them an award in America, Cartooning and Freedom Award. So I started to realize we take for granted what we have here, and I did as a cartoonist even. Here is my depiction of President Erdogan in 2017. And this is playing off the visual of his mustache and showing many journalists that he jailed, including Musa Kart. And this was a vote. The public voted to expand his powers. And as a result, he cracked down on dissent and journalists. And, these cartoonists who were using the power of these strong visuals to speak out against corruption were again, among the first to get thrown in jail and, sort of try to get their opinions to be silenced. When here in America, we can depict our leaders as animals, and many have, and many cartoonists have, and so have I. So here's an example from 2017 depicting the president with his sort of tenuous relationship with the press, to say the least, biting the hand that feeds him, and sort of how he likes to attack the media, even though he needs the media to fuel his base and to get his message out. Here is another depiction of Trump as an animal, but this time on the other end of an animal, the Republican Party, having John McCain cleaning up for him. So again, showing how far we can go here in America in terms of free speech, and this is something that we should not take for granted, because when we begin to get, cartoons begin to suffer and leaders will crack down on cartoonists, then as citizens, we will not be able to speak out as much on our own beliefs. So where does the freedom come from in America to draw an editorial cartoon on any topic, any leader, in any way we want? And it comes from, of course, the Constitution, the First Amendment. But this, there was a precedent set, a Supreme Court case that sort of became the bedrock of freedoms that we currently have. It was Hustler versus Falwell in 1988. This is a movie poster of telling the story of the case. It's a great movie, The People versus Larry Flint. But this is the crux of the case, was this ad. This was an ad in Hustler magazine depicting Jerry Falwell, a religious leader. This was a parody, it was a satire. It was, dark and crude comedy, but depicting him talking about his first time having, intercourse, and it would be with his mother in an outhouse when he was drunk on Campari. Horribly crude. Nonetheless, it was satire and it should not be cracked down upon in a country that embraces free speech. Notice there's an asterisk at the top. And if you look down at the bottom, it says ad parody, not to be taken seriously. So what the AEC, the group of cartoonists in America, helped back the case against Falwell and supported Hustler. And in this case, Hustler won, and William Rehnquist, the Supreme Court Justice, even cited editorial cartoons as a way, editorial cartoons as an example of protected free speech, and it compared this to an editorial cartoon. So that was a key case, and since then, when we talk about how cartoons can make parodies of copywritten material like Absolute Vodka here, this is my version of a parody ad. Instead of Campari, this is Absolute, but absolute pardon power. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. And this is a cartoon from a few years ago, but it's coming back in fashion with his pardoning of Michael Flynn and rumors of pardoning others. So, you know, we have this wonderful tradition and we have this Supreme Court case that backs it up, but we need to protect this freedom because it has been under siege, especially in the last several years under this Trump administration. Here is a cartoon that's showing, comparing Trump to other dictators that are cracking down on free speech. This calls for retribution. China, who has detained poets, artists, writers, Iran, jailing artists. We just learned about Atina Farghadani, Turkey, Musa Kart, and then Trump talking about punishing NBC and networks for SNL, for unflattering depictions of himself. These are autocratic tendencies that raise a lot of red flags for us in the media that would be the early signs of someone trying to crack down on free speech, including his talk of changing libel laws to allow cartoonists and journalists to be sued. 2018, he continues his campaign against the media and free speech. You're the enemy of the people, his common refrain, along with fake news. Anything he doesn't like becomes fake news. Also, the media, if he's calling the media the enemy of the people for writing unflattering things about him, he's also cozying up to people like Vladimir Putin, Kim Jong-un, who are truly enemies of the people and enemies of democracy. Putin, who has tried to has poisoned journalists and tampered in the election of the US and other free countries. So this is troubling, and we need to continue to push back against this. His next sort of another way he's part of his campaign against free speech is the events of 2018 that surrounded the death of Washington Post journalist Jamil Khashoggi. This journalist for the Washington Post was brutally assassinated, and it was his murder, his graphic murder was linked to the leader of Saudi Arabia, Mohammed bin Salman, and this was really a test for the administration, like if they were to speak out and support an American journalist, and instead they basically sided with this more of an autocrat who was trying to silence a journalist, and it just was another really dark chapter in the recent history of an American president eroding the trust in the media and the freedom of expression of America. And yet another way that he has hurt freedom of expression is threatening and actually taking away press passes from certain journalists to access the White House press pool. And he had in 2018 revoked the press pass of Jim Acosta of CNN and talked about blocking certain organizations that weren't friendly to him. But the cost of having a free press in a free country is that we are free to criticize our leaders, for their actions. So here I'm having the journalist with his notepad representing the truth about to be dunked into a dunk tank. And this is the White House press pool. So if we take a step back and take a look at our media landscape, social media plays a very big role these days in a free expression, in expression in general, in political discourse. And really, since 2015, 2016, Facebook has been a large part of this, and a large part of the flip side to full freedom of expression is that you'll have hate speech on social media and meddling propaganda from other countries. These things will flourish when freedom of speech is uninhibited. And so this is a challenge with a country that has free speech. There needs to be, when hate speech and propaganda and meddling in our elections becomes a problem, speech should be regulated by private corporations like Facebook, because first of all, they're not a government, but they're eroding the political discourse. So for a while, Facebook has just put its head in the sand and did nothing when actual fake news and propaganda was being spread by political groups and foreign countries like Russia. And also hate speech was just on the rise. So it became a challenge. What do we do about it? Because we want to be a free country. And here I have another cartoon. Nothing to see here, folks. Let's move along. Mark Zuckerberg sort of trying to get people not to look at the fact that the Facebook thumb has sort of squashed objective truth in the 2016 election. They allowed these groups and these fake news stories like Pizzagate and things against Hillary Clinton to sort of blossom when they had no basis in truth. So eventually there was a reckoning, and Mark Zuckerberg he was on Congress had called a committee and grilled him on fake news issues and his role on what they can do. And he had his public mea culpa. He apologized. The angry clouds of emojis up there represent the Congress, but also the people. We want them to do something. So social media groups have begun to push back and start to, Zuckerberg, like in the previous one, has removed the Facebook page of white supremacy groups, and others. Here, Twitter CEO Jack Dorsey earlier this year blocked or flagged one of Trump's tweets for the first time. And here I depict him getting one, but out the window there are hundreds of others, just all the lies and misinformation the president puts out from his large megaphone. So I'm just showing this is fine, but we got a lot of work to do walking this line. So it's showing you again the pushback on social media. On Instagram, now the downside to this is artists like myself who practice free speech, are practitioners of free speech and satire. We get caught in the net that is cast to stop hate speech falsely, because these are algorithms that are trying to find hate speech. I got this post taken down that I had posted earlier this year because an algorithm deemed it to be hate speech. It's criticizing Iran and saying their official response to an assassination attempt, not an attempt, but the assassination of their general, Soleimani. I was making the point that there will be an unofficial response coming where they'll have possible terrorist plots or terrorist actions through their proxies like Hezbollah. Now, this was a very popular opinion, even with US intelligence officials, but Instagram deemed it to be hate speech. So this is not a perfect process, and we need to ensure that legitimate opinions like cartoons like this aren't censored along with true hate speech. Narcissists in the reflecting pool. Meanwhile, Trump in recent weeks has continued to use Twitter to live in denial and feed his own narcissism and deny the election. And Twitter, it's encouraging to see, has been flagging almost every post with information, and some of them they've been removing. This is the last section of my presentation, so bear with me, but I'm going to shift here from Trump in the previous one has been sensitive to social media and reports that aren't flattering to him, and he uses Twitter to lash out. But he also is sensitive to the written word and all these books that are being published. So here I have a parody of Alfred Hitchcock's The Books, and I have all of these insider books that have been published on that, critical of his administration, and he was suing, trying to stop the release of these books, and yet another level to his push against free expression. And another way to look at this cartoon, it's a good way to pivot into this final section here, is just, I want you to also look at cartoons as sort of like a modern, the fine art, there's like a fine wine of memes. Memes have taken over, sort of our discourse, and memes are like the boxed wine of political cartoons. Memes are easily made, readily available, and humorous, but an editorial cartoon has layers of meaning, and it's crafted with, with character, and it has sort of subtle little Easter eggs to find in there. So, cartoons are really, are just like a sort of quick way to encapsulate an opinion, but also to just express, like this next cartoon, capture the public's mood. And this is almost like a modern meme as well, because memes will reference popular culture or art. And I'll show you in these next series of images, to just reference traditional art history or famous pieces of art, like the Alfred Hitchcock's The Books. Here's Christina's World, Andrew Wyeth from 1948. COVID World, this is all of us in quarantine, looking at the door, hoping to go outside. This is Son of Man, Rene Magritte, 1964. I'm having at the reopening, when we try to get back into society. COVID is just in our face with everything, like every decision we make. So this is just open to interpretation a little bit, this one, but it's capturing the public mood. And I also use art, not just reference art to not just capture the public mood, but to make an important point on our public health, like these final two. Show some human decency and cover yourself, says David, with a mask. Saying that we need the new definition of decency is a face covering. And finally here, I'm referencing another famous piece of art, Norman Rockwell's Freedom from Want from 1943. And it is freedom from science, and showing our large Thanksgiving gatherings are like rolling the dice on whether we'll get COVID or infect one of our relatives. So I hope you learned a lot about editorial cartoons. And I'm happy to take any questions on freedom of expression, on the art side, or anything else. So thank you so much. I will stop my screen share at this point, and back to the group. Thank you, Dennis.
Thank you, Adam. Joy, do we have any questions?
You hear me?
Now we can.
Okay. We have a handful of questions. I want to start by letting Adam know that someone wrote, "This artist is very clever."
Thank you.
And I'm going to ask Adam that you speak as loudly as you can, because there seems to be some problems with the audio a little bit. But how quickly does an idea hit you? Do you immediately visualize the cartoon you will create?
Let me see if I can help the audio at all. I'll just move a little closer. It all depends. I mean, sometimes there are ideas that strike me and sort of pop into my head when I'm, doing the dishes or doing a different task or cooking, and I'll make sure I jot it down quickly. Other ideas come when I really need to think of something at a deadline, and I'll have techniques to brainstorm on the topic. I'll go through images associated with the topic. So, some are easier than others, and some cartoons are reverse engineered, where I come up with a visual juxtaposition of some things, but I don't have the opinion yet, and I need to sort of put the writing into it. But most of the time, I have the point I want to make, and I need to sort of brainstorm a concept after that.
Okay, I have another question. Are you optimistic about the future of the free press in the US?
I am optimistic, because I think, first of all, I think everyone tends to just think that every generation thinks things are going in the wrong direction. I think over the course of history, when people have been polled, they're always like, things are going to hell in a handbasket. But I think when you take the long view, we have social media, the internet has really exploded freedom of expression and made our society, given a large voice to a lot of groups. I mean, if you look at, the power of the cell phone and recording, police brutality, I mean, that's just a powerful way to have a voice as a citizen. And we're seeing civil rights movements happen again because of that. So I think there's always going to be corporate interests that are going to fight some of this, and from the government, like the president. But he is, the president seems to be, he isn't conceded, but it seems that we'll have a President Biden who is friendlier to the press. And I think the media is learning slowly to adapt to technology, but in the long run, we will remain a free society and have a strong freedom of the press. It might look different. It will look very different, but we will still thrive.
What news sources do you read or look at?
As many as I can. I think the key with what I do is a creative, I have a creative job. So I think for me, the trick is to flood myself with information. And I think then the ideas will start coming. I can't just sit and stare at a piece of paper. I have to read and consume and talk and move. So when I'm consuming news sources, I'm reading, all the big papers like the New York Times, the Washington Post, Wall Street Journal. I like the Wall Street Journal for the conservative point of view. And I also listen to NPR. I do check some of the broadcast stations just to see the pulse of what's going on, CNN, Fox News. But I think mostly I get my information from newspapers and online media companies that are, print or long form journalistic operations, Politico, ProPublica, and a lot of journalists I follow individually on Twitter that I will use them as a curated newspaper almost, and they will point out to, hey, check this out at a place that maybe I wouldn't normally look. So I think Twitter is a good place for me to have a curated news feed.
Okay, we have a lot of questions. I'm going to combine two together. What have you ever been pressured by the news editorial board? And I'll combine that with how many do you do a lot of redos or re-edits of what you've designed?
Not really. I mean, so the process, I'm lucky that I'm given a lot of freedom by my editors, and that is in part due to my longevity at the news and there's the tradition at the Buffalo News. I've been there since 2004, and I've gone through 4 editorial page editors, and each time I would get a new editor, they would see things are working fine with me, so like, don't fix it if it's not broken. So when they would inherit me, I would be given a little more freedom each time. And we've had a strong tradition with Tom Tolles since Bruce Shanks, really, of having an independent cartoonist that hold his own viewpoints. So I had to fight early on to establish that ground and keep that ground. But at this point, maybe it's like 1 or 2 cartoons a year. There'll be an issue when they're finished, because usually either the editor-in-chief hadn't seen it until the last minute and it's a taste issue with a sensitive topic, like if someone was murdered or like police abuse. Sensitive issues like that can raise a problem if the imagery is too touchy, but I've never been told not to say something because of the message. As long as I can defend the opinion, and I can, and that's the point of what I'm doing, then I will be okay doing it. And it's really the imagery at rare occasion that becomes an issue.
Can you give the website address for the organization that helps journalists in undemocratic countries?
Yeah, the name of the organization is, I call it CRNI. It's Cartoonist Rights Network International. And let me pull up the actual website so I believe it's just cartoonistrights.org. Yeah, so, and I believe they do take donations. They're a non-for-profit that that go toward helping cartoonists around the world. But yeah, it's cartoonistrights.org.
Okay. And do you have any advice for wannabe political cartoonists?
I would say just keep on drawing, and you can self-publish in this day and age of social media and technology. You can create an Instagram account and, you know, put your work out daily. I mean, there's this account called The Daily Don on Instagram. He's not a traditional editorial cartoonist, and he has, I don't even know, 50,000 followers or more, 100,000. And he just creates a drawing every day. And doesn't work for a paper, but he gained a huge following just putting the right hashtags together and just putting good work out. So I think if you have an opinion and you love drawing, you know, just figure out an avenue to do it, whether it's Instagram or Facebook or Twitter. That's the beauty of technology right now. The challenge is, how do you convert that to a profession? And, you know, people are still figuring that out.
Adam, who's your favorite cartoonist?
Oh, that's a hard question, because I'm friends with all these guys that draw. I mean, I have a lot of favorites. You know, I love Matt Davies in Newsday. His work is beautiful. It's watercolor. He's got such a unique style. Steve Sack at the Star Tribune is excellent. And then I love, you know, Ann Telnez at the Washington Post. You know, Tolles had retired. He's one of my all-time favorites. And some of these alternative cartoonists are great, like Matt Bors and you know, Tim Egan. So there's too many to really name. But if you email me, I can, if anybody, you know, was more curious, I can point them in some cool directions.
And can you give us a tip about what your next political cartoon will be?
Well, there's one in the paper today that I didn't post yet on, I have to finish coloring it. So I can even pull that up. If people have seen the print version, that's on, you know, on Trump's campaign to not concede. Tomorrow I'm working on something. I haven't decided yet. And this is the nature of my job. It's 1 o'clock. I have to figure it out by 2:30. I might do something on sort of our second phase of quarantine here with the second wave and just kind of adjusting to life, really with things kind of getting worse again, or heading into the Christmas season with COVID, you know, on everybody's minds. And so I'm looking for a way to get away from Trump. Every day I try to not comment on the president, but it's hard not to when he's acting the way he is, and I have a responsibility as a journalist. So I don't know, we'll see.
Okay, and this will be the final question. Thank you to everyone who added questions. What pieces won the Pulitzer Prize for you?
It was a portfolio of 20 cartoons and on a variety of topics. So there was a few on Obama. There was one on like women, equal pay for women. There was Supreme Court case on freedom of expression and money in politics. There was 20 of them, and it's difficult because you want to tell the story of the year through your work and through your political, you know, lens. So putting together the portfolio, it's more time consuming than people think. And I was a juror for 2 years after that. And so I got a peek into the process, and it was really interesting to see, you know, all these entries that just really told the story of whatever year it was in their own way. So the portfolio was on the Pulitzer website, though, the 20 different cartoons. And yeah, there's a few that really were my favorite, but I worked with my editor in putting the whole thing together.
All right, Joy, thank you very much for giving us all those questions. Thanks to the audience for coming up with them. You know, folks, whether you agree with Adam, disagree with Adam, I trust we can all agree that he is a genuine Buffalo talent. And as we imagine Buffalo, this whole series is about bringing people onto a platform. What better place than to be hosted than the Buffalo and Erie County Public Library. Freedom of speech is a valuable possession and not to be taken for granted. Adam, you've helped remind us of that. I trust we'll all be more aware of it on a daily basis as we protect the very rights and take responsibility for those rights. Now, we're going to continue this theme of art and democracy. Again, this was the theme for that Buffalo Day was a component of this past summer at Chautauqua. The physical part was postponed, but the digital part, virtual part, happened. And so next week, I want to thank everybody. We so appreciate this new format. And join us next week, same time, same Zoom link, when we talk to Tina Comiga, who from Explore Buffalo, who will speak about the Acropolis and Buffalo's History Museum and Albright Knox Art Gallery. Art and democracy is grounded right in the buildings and in the very democratic park that Olmsted designed for us, and the buildings that surround the lake. So I'm Dennis Galucki. Be well and have a good afternoon.